Hi, I'm Dwayne Brown. Tonight on KPBS Evening Edition, Congress could soon take its first war vote in more than a decade. And California is getting ready to set new goals on climate change.
Any person who does not vaccinate his or her children is just engaging in child abuse.
Strong words in the debate over vaccines, why one doctor says they're victims of their own success. I'm Peggy Pico with an in-depth look just ahead. And why are Mexican drug cartels cutting back on smuggling pot into the U.S. while increasing the amount of other drugs like heroin? Our update on border issues and what's being done about it.
This is one of just 5 northern white rhinos left in the world. Tonight, we begin a 2-part report on efforts to save the species. KPBS Evening Edition starts right now. Hi, good evening. Thanks for joining us. Congress could soon take its first war vote in 13 years. The White House is working on a proposal tonight authorizing the U.S. military to fight Islamic State terrorists. This after the U.S. confirmed the death of an American woman held captive by ISIS for more than a year. Kayla Mueller was a 26-year-old aid worker from Arizona captured while working in Syria. The Islamic State says she was killed during a Jordanian airstrike, but the White House says there's no evidence civilians were in the target area. PBS NewsHour will have more on the death of Mueller coming up at 7. Senate Republicans, meanwhile, say there's a stalemate over funding for the Homeland Security Department because it would also overturn President Obama's actions to limit deportations. Senate Democrats are blocking the measure. Homeland Security's funding is set to run out in 2 weeks. Congress could extend the current levels, but agency officials say that would delay initiatives like new security technology at the border with Mexico. Border security deals with a wide range of issues, including drug smuggling. Peggy Pico has an update tonight.
Marijuana seizures are down, but heroin and meth smuggling have spiked, and there's been a drop in the number of children crossing the border from Central America. But how prepared is the U.S. for another surge of immigrant kids? KPBS reporter Amitha Sharma spoke with Assistant Secretary of State William Brownfield, who oversees U.S. efforts against illegal drugs and organized crime. And Amitha, earlier today you talked with Brownfield in San Diego. What is he doing here?
Well, Secretary Brownfield is actually in Southern California this week to form partnerships with local law enforcement agencies to help out in international operations. He says that, look, federal law enforcement resources are stretched over 80 countries across the globe, and they're all tapped out. And he says local law enforcement has areas of expertise in domestic violence and crowd and traffic control that federal law enforcement simply doesn't have. Here's more of what he said.
This visit has been an opportunity to sign an MOU with a new partner, the Los Angeles County District Attorney's Office, to meet with a partner that we have had for more than 2 years, the California Attorney General, to meet with a partner that I hope I can convince would be of value in engaging with us, and that is the San Diego Police Department.
Now, recent reports also reveal that Mexican drug cartels, as we mentioned, are smuggling more heroin and methamphetamine into the country, but less marijuana. Is there a reason for that? And is the U.S. worried?
Well, news stories suggest that as marijuana becomes more decriminalized in the United States, more varieties of pot and better quality pot are being grown domestically. Mexican drug cartels are taking notice. They're revamping their business model, and they are instead focusing on producing cheap heroin and methamphetamine. Secretary Brownfield says, yes, this switch is happening, but it's not because of marijuana, what's going on with marijuana in this country. He says U.S. consumption of cocaine has dropped by 50% since 2007, and that's why Mexican drug cartels are now shifting to heroin and meth production. He says he's worried about this trend, and he says that heroin users in the United States should also be worried.
First, because you're dealing with professional criminals and narcotics traffickers. Second, because you don't know the purity of the heroin that you are buying. And third, it is far more difficult to control the amount of consumption, the amount that you're taking in, if you are taking it as pure heroin, leading to more overdoses, leading to more deaths, leading to greater dangers for the United States. That, I believe, is the challenge that we're facing right now.
And here's another challenge. Last month, a drone loaded with methamphetamine crashed near the San Ysidro border crossing. And when did drug cartels start using drones to transport their illegal drugs?
Well, I think it was just a matter of time before drug cartels started using drones to smuggle drugs. And I think it's going to prove to be a vexing problem for the U.S. government. As Secretary Brownfield pointed out, even the White House's own radar system could not detect a small drone that crashed onto the south lawn of the White House last month.
We have to work through over the next 10 years as we figure how to incorporate this technology, which is not just growing, it's booming now. It's almost exploding in terms of its growth in our own lives and our own approach to business in the 21st century.
And finally, last summer's influx of unaccompanied minors from Central America to the southern border into the country, those numbers have dropped. But immigration officials, I understand, say they're expecting another influx from the Mexico border this summer. How well prepared is the U.S. for that influx?
Well, Peggy, between October 2013 and October 2014, 70,000 unaccompanied children crossed into the U.S. from Mexico, El Salvador, Honduras, and Guatemala. Many were trying to reunite with family members. Others were just escaping poverty and violence. This influx caused President Obama to declare a humanitarian crisis at the border, and temporary shelters were set up. Secretary Brownfield says that there are now mechanisms in place to handle another potential surge.
Yes, we have decided to commit the resources to this issue. Second, what are we trying to do? We're trying to address the root causes of the problem. Poor economies, lack of employment possibilities, social issues, crime on the streets, violence, the danger and risk to children, leading parents to be willing to take the risk of sending their children unaccompanied to the United States of America. We have also recommitted to working with the institutions of government in the 7 Central American countries, but particularly those that we call the Northern Triangle, Guatemala, Honduras, and El Salvador, in order to work to ensure that they have better control over their own borders.
And by the way, Peggy, some of what Brownfield was talking about is outlined in President Obama's 2016 budget, in which he refers to a $1 billion aid package for Central America.
All right, KPBS investigative reporter Amitha Sharma, thanks so much.
Thank you, Peggy.
Now, the arrival of those immigrant children last summer sparked protests outside a Border Patrol station in Riverside County. Several people were arrested at one of them. Tonight, the Riverside Press Enterprise reports plea deals made by 3 people who had been supporting the migrants. They are all pleading guilty to charges of resisting an officer. Former San Diego police officer Anthony Arevalos lost a bid to reduce his prison sentence. A state appeals court reversed a lower court's decision to throw out 2 of the guilty verdicts against him. Arevalos was sentenced to nearly 9 years in prison for sexually assaulting women while he was on duty in the Gaslamp district. New developments in California's fight against climate change. State lawmakers introduced new goals to cut fossil fuel dependence by 50% while increasing the use of renewable energy by 2030. It also requires the state's major pension funds to ditch investments in coal companies.
50% less petroleum use, 50% electricity coming from renewable sources, and 50% better energy efficiency in our buildings. These all send a very strong message, a strong signal to California businesses, and leaves no doubt in the direction we're heading in.
The new bill follows Governor Brown's call to do more to fight climate change. Officials claim renewable energy is best for the state's economy and environment. A 5-month delay could save the San Marcos Unified School District $8 million. KPBS education reporter Matt Bowler joins us from our North County Bureau to explain.
The district is putting off the opening of its first elementary school. Double Peak Elementary will be just up the hill from Cal State San Marcos on San Elijo Road. It's going to be a K-8 school with about 1,200 students. It was supposed to open in August, but the district delayed the opening until January 2016 to save about $8 million on what's already a $75 million project. District spokesperson Anna Roybal says there were two key issues. One was getting the sign-off from the state architect on the school's design, and the other was getting easements from property owners that live and have property next to the school. She says they could have paid overtime and run double shifts in order to open on time, but that the district would rather put that money someplace else. Now, if you want more information, the district is holding a meeting tomorrow night at 6:30 p.m. at San Elijo Middle School. Matt Bowler, KPBS News.
There are more than 5,700 people working as lawyers in San Diego. Many of them provide free services or pro bono work to build their law practice. And on the second Tuesday of each month in Hillcrest, clients receive one-on-one help to evaluate their legal problems.
There's a lot of law on the books that's designed to help residential tenants in situations like this.
Attorney Ed Swartz is part of a rapidly growing incubator movement providing affordable legal services to folks who often don't have access to lawyers. Joshua Bruiser has been practicing law for a year now.
We provide these free 30-minute consultations so people can evaluate their legal issues, and then if they like, they can hire us as attorneys, or we can refer them out or refer them to other people in ALI.
ALI stands for Access to Law Initiative, an education outreach program put together by California Western School of Law in downtown San Diego. It allows graduates from the school to share cases and bounce ideas off each other while giving back to the community.
So it's kind of like a law firm environment, but it helps us prepare to become better lawyers on our own.
Response has been good, with people from as far away as Escondido and San Isidro showing up at the LGBT Center on the second Tuesday of the month for free advice on a range of issues, from landlord-tenant disputes and immigration to employment and temporary restraining orders.
We've been working with the City Council, and they suggested that this would be a good location because it's centrally located. The staff is phenomenal. They're very welcoming and open to all different types of people. And our clients are not just LGBT people. Like I said, they're people from all over the county, from all different backgrounds. Cal Western is the same law school behind the California Innocence Project, dedicated to releasing wrongly convicted inmates through DNA testing. The legal clinics are held on the second Tuesday of every month in Hillcrest. The measles outbreak at Disneyland has led to nearly a dozen local cases, and it's fueled new debate about immunization. Peggy Pico is looking into an iNewsSource investigation into the problem.
Right now, parents can opt out of vaccinating school-age children through a personal belief exemption. But with 92 documented cases of measles statewide and low vaccination rates, the exemption is being challenged. California Assemblywoman Lorena Gonzalez, along with state senators Richard Pan and Ben Allen, will propose legislation to eliminate the personal belief exemption in California.
When you can't look at science and medicine and you put other children at risk, we as a state can't condone it, and we have to be able to say, if you want to send your child to school, this is not an acceptable exemption.
iNewsSource reporter Joanne Farian joins us with the details on this. And Joanne, what's covered and not covered under this personal belief exemption?
Well, basically, if philosophically you're opposed to vaccination, or for religious beliefs you're opposed to vaccination, that's all covered under a personal belief exemption. It's basically one sheet of paper. I have it in front of me. The only caveat is you have to go and see a doctor or a nurse practitioner, some kind of healthcare provider, to discuss the risks and benefits of vaccination. They fill it out, you fill it out, and that's basically it.
And even though you have to go see a health provider, this is not the medical exemption.
No, medical exemption is different. That's not included in this proposed legislation.
I see. Now, you spoke with a San Diego immunologist who says that vaccines are becoming a victim of their own success. What does he mean by that?
Well, basically, they've done such a great job of eradicating disease that we have forgotten how bad the disease or the illness can be. For example, I mean, I didn't grow up with anybody who had polio. I didn't grow up with people who had serious consequences from measles. My son's been immunized. These are, you know, against diseases that we rarely see. And as a result, we sort of start taking advantage of the fact that these diseases are so rare, and we kind of get sloppy with our vaccination.
Sure, they're not in our experience. Now, you did an in-depth report about this, and let's watch that.
There were many years of struggle and heartbreak. Parents lived in fear of polio's sudden attack and the tragic aftermath.
71-year-old Randall Christensen, a San Diego attorney, remembers that fear.
We were all scared to death of it, and the parents were.
Before a vaccine eradicated the disease in the U.S., polio caused 15,000 cases of paralysis each year. That's according to the Centers for Disease Control. Christensen didn't have polio, but he remembers well having whooping cough and the measles. Growing up, he knew a 12-year-old kid who died from the measles.
Tissue culture tests are conducted on every batch of vaccine.
Before a measles vaccine was discovered, between 400 and 500 people died of the disease each year, and thousands more had serious complications. So when Christensen hears about parents who refuse to immunize their kids, he doesn't mince his words.
Any person who does not vaccinate his or her children is just engaging in child abuse.
While Christensen's memories of these childhood illnesses are vivid, most people who have grown up with routine immunization have no first-hand knowledge of how bad they can be.
Then it decreases because vaccines were introduced.
San Diego County Public Health Officer Wilma Wooten says we're losing our collective memory of these diseases. She's volunteered in Africa on medical missions where mothers are eager to have their children immunized.
Because they've seen the devastation that not being vaccinated causes, the death is associated with getting infected and the loss of their children. We haven't seen that in recent history in the United States.
Wooten says it may be one of the reasons some parents choose not to vaccinate their kids. An iNewsSource analysis of state data shows that nearly 51,000 kindergartners in California began the school year missing one or more of the recommended vaccines against diseases such as measles, polio, and whooping cough.
Absolutely, vaccines are a victim of their own success.
Dr. Shane Crotty is an immunologist. He says it comes down to whether people fear the vaccine more than the disease.
So if there's a very small fear that somebody has or small worry somebody has about the vaccine, but they have zero fear of the disease, sometimes then they'll decide to not get vaccinated.
When Dr. Andrew Wakefield undermined confidence in MMR back in 1998,
fear of vaccines, in particular the measles vaccine, can be traced to British scientist Andrew Wakefield. In the late 90s, he claimed there was a link between the vaccine and autism, a claim that has since been discredited many times. Still, a growing number of parents like Daniela Mejia are choosing not to immunize their kids out of fear of vaccine side effects. Mejia's 4-year-old daughter has not had a single dose of any of the recommended vaccines.
I'm not going to defend mine or try to prove my point of view. It's just a choice that I continue to make.
23-year-old Mejia's opinion holds true for many of her peers. A recent Pew Research study found 41% of young adults believe it should be up to parents to decide whether to immunize their kids, while the vast majority of people 65 and older say vaccines ought to be mandatory.
Now, Joanne, aside from legislation, what can public health officials and the public health department here in San Diego do to encourage people to get immunized?
Well, the experts we spoke with basically say it comes down to having that conversation with parents, that one-on-one between a doctor and a mom or dad who maybe doesn't have all the information or has misinformation. Although I have to tell you, Dr. Wilma Wooten says there's always going to be a group of people that no matter what you tell them, they're never going to immunize their kids.
All right. iNewsSource reporter Joanne Farian, thank you so much.
San Diego Zoological Society is used to successful interventions. They help with the recovery of the California condor, but researchers and keepers are on the verge of losing a battle, as KPBS Environment reporter Eric Anderson explains.
More than 100 animals live in the South African exhibit at the San Diego Zoo Safari Park. Rhinos are at the top of the pecking order. Jane Kennedy is the exhibit's lead keeper, and she says the unquestioned star here is Nola.
Come on over, Nola.
A 40-something northern white rhino.
So she's got a little bit of a sinus infection. I've got a little bit of a cold today, too. She's on some medication to help her with it.
Nola is a senior citizen nearing the end of her life. That's why the sinus infection is serious. She gave keepers a scare in December when she first got sick. Kennedy says Nola is essentially an 80-year-old, and a month later, she's still getting medicine.
And then for Nola, we'll do 1, 2.
Nola's energy level plummeted as the sickness grabbed hold, but a few weeks of medicine and some hands-on care did a world of good. Keepers are restoring her health, but the situation isn't so bright for her species. War and poaching in the Democratic Republic of Congo extinguished northern white rhinos in the wild. Besides Nola, a northern white lives in a Czech zoo, and there are 3 more living on a reserve in Kenya.
I try to think that Nola isn't any different than any other animal, but she is. She's one of 5 northern white rhinos left in the world, and what we humans do makes a difference for the extinction of this animal. I'm sorry, it makes a difference, what we do here.
Kennedy says a large part of her job with Nola is to make sure she's comfortable. She says it's hospice care. That can mean a friendly early morning ear rub for the 4,000-pound animal. It can be making sure Nola gets the proper medical attention, or it can be a comforting presence as she works through the final hours of life. Kennedy is ready for whatever happens.
I've known quite a few rhinos over the years. She truly is the sweetest rhino I've ever known. I can walk up to her any day and I can read her personality, and she sees me in the morning. She actually gets up and she greets me. She'll get up and she'll make that shuffle and it's like, "Hi, Jane. How you doing? Here, big girl. Here." So that's her medicine apple.
Nola's sudden December illness hit the Safari Park team especially hard because of Angelifu. That male northern white rhino died just a week before Nola got sick. He was old and suffering from arthritis, but the death was unexpected. It was a shock. Randy Ricas is the curator of mammals at the Safari Park. He says Angelifu's death reached well beyond his San Diego home.
There's only one other male left, and unfortunately he's not fertile. So this was the last fertile male that we had, and losing that, I mean, that was really tough because that was just another door closing.
Ricas said that slamming door prompted a come-to-Jesus meeting for zoo staff. Veterinarians, researchers, keepers, and administrators did some soul-searching. They asked themselves if this was it. Was the northern white rhino essentially extinct?
Every species that we brought on grounds that we have put in our collection and we had a breeding group of, we have reproduced here, except the northern white rhinoceros. It's our only animal that we have not reproduced. And that in itself kind of goes down hard. But not to have reproduced it and to watch it go into extinction, that's something that none of us want to see.
But they haven't given up hope. There's been success reviving the closely related southern white rhino. There were fewer than 100 of those animals a century ago. Careful management and conservation allowed the population to swell to more than 20,000. More than 80 southern whites have been born here in San Diego. But Ricas says they are the exception among rhinos. He is particularly worried about the Javan rhino. Estimates put their population at around 50 individuals.
With a species that has a 16-month gestation period and 3.5 years birth interval, so they're only putting one calf on the ground every 3.5 years. You have that in conjunction with the number that are being poached. We could be at the exact same place in a very short period of time with another of the rhino species.
Rika says building the body of knowledge is an ongoing process, and having success with one species could boost the future of another. That makes Chudy another piece of the complicated rhino puzzle. Safari Park lead mammal keeper Eileen Neff is helping care for that 300-pound baby.
He's sweet, just like all the other babies. He's very needy with the keepers and originally wanted us to lie with him while he slept.
Chudy gains 3 to 4 pounds a day, and he loves to play. The chance of a baby northern white rhino frolicking with keepers is exponentially smaller, however. There are no breeding-age animals, and if there is to be a northern white revival, it rests in the hands of scientists. Eric Anderson, KPBS News.
KPBS video journalist Nick McVicker is helping produce this two-part report. Tomorrow, we'll explore some of the options to keep the species alive. You may have felt the high-pressure building. Santa Ana winds are on the way back. It'll be warm along the coast tomorrow, into the low 80s by Thursday. Low to mid-80s for the inland valleys with a high wind warning. Windy in the mountains, too, with temperatures mostly in the 60s. As for the desert, plenty of sunshine, temperatures in the low to mid-80s. Tonight's stories are online at kpbs.org/evening edition. Thanks for joining us. Have a great night.